We'll give everyone just another minute and then we'll get going, inshallah. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا وقدوتنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأزكى التسليم. اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزيدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Welcome to beginning classical Arabic, picking up right where we left off, inshallah ta'ala. Okay, so let's have Sister Asma, if you are there, and Sister Asarrat, if you both can read, one of you being Muhammad, the other one being Ahmed. It might be helpful to start with just the previous line from Hamid. He asks Muhammad a question about his language, and then he goes from there. So let's have Musarrat, you can be Hamid, and Sister Asma, you can be Muhammad.
ما لغتك يا محمد يا محمد؟
لغة الأردية.
أهي لغة سهلة؟
نعم، هي لغة سهلة.
Very good. Stop just for a second. I'm just going to point things out as review for all those, some people are following the live stream. So the question was, ما لغتك يا محمد? So we have two things going on there. The first thing is that we're adding the possessive pronoun to lugatun. Lugatun meaning language. So lugatuka would be masculine, second person singular. What is your language? And then we also had ya Muhammadu. Remember that if we have a name like Muhammadun, if we call out to it with ya, then it's going to drop its tanween. It's going to simply go down to ya Muhammadu. And then the answer, you had to change the possessive pronoun accordingly. So it would not make sense if Muhammad simply spit back the same exact phrase and said lugatuka al-urdiyatu. That would not make sense because that would mean your language, right? He has to change it to reflect the answer, which is talking about his language. So now he has to say lugati. And Sister Asma did a good job adhering to the rules of Hamzat al-Wasl when she said lugatil urdiyatu. It has to run smoothly right into the answer al-urdiyatu because it begins with a Hamzat al-Wasl. And all of that is Jumla Ismiya, which is why it's all urdiyatu, lugatuka, right? They have before the possessive pronoun, we see the grammar is demonstrated. Luga, let me go up here for a second. Lugatuka, right? The ta, or the marking that is going to be the vowel that's going to be on the ta, is going to show us, is it marfu', is it majroor, is it mansub? It could be in other scenarios, min lugatika, right? Or ra'aytu lugataka, right? Or something like that, depending on where it is in the sentence. Here we're all talking about Jumla Ismiya. what is your language? And we said before, if we were to say a sentence, that means your language is what? That's a jumla ismiya, so both parts are going to be marfu' in this case with a dhamma. Lughati al-urdiyatu. One could say, well, wait a second, according to that, then shouldn't it be lughatui, right? Shouldn't the ta in lugha have a dhamma and then you add the ya to indicate the possessive pronoun? And in some sense, theoretically, you're right. However, this phoneme, this packet of sound, is extremely disliked in Arabic. Anything that is ui, they consider in Arabic phonetics, they consider the dhamma and the fatha and the kasra to be on like a continuum, right? And so going from one end of the spectrum to the other is considered not permissible in most cases. And so that's why you find in Arabic there's rules to avoid that. So here the dhamma gets dropped and it's simply lughati. Then we had a question, a follow-up question about it. Ahiya lugatun sahlatun. Notice how everything has to agree for grammar. Pardon me, it's allergy season. 1 second. Ahiya lugatun sahlatun. The hamza here is hamzatul istifham. That's how we make a question. Hiya is referring to, in English we would translate it as it. However, what it's referring to is language, which is a feminine noun. Lugatun sahlatun. Easy sahlatun has to agree with lugatun, which is singular feminine. And everything's marfu' because it's jumla ismiya. Mubtada khabar. Na'am hiya lugatun sahlatun. Very good. Ladies, you can keep going.
وهمزة ما لغته
Lughatul Yabaniyatu وهي لغة صعبة.
أين أبوك يا محمد؟
أبي في أبي في الكويت هو طبيبة شهير
هو طفيف شهير. Yeah.
وأين أمك؟
هي أيضا في الكويت مع أبي, or like my father. هي مدرسة هناك.
Very good. Pause. Let me just point out a couple things. So starting with aina, now we have another thing to keep track of. We have certain words like ab, which is father, and which is mother, and we are also attaching to them now possessive pronouns. And ab has specific rules. We're going to get into them later. We're learning them separate, and that will come very shortly, so I won't go into it now. But just take it on faith that it is abuka. We add this little wow here. Abuka, ummuka. And for English speakers, it can be a little bit tricky to keep in mind that the possessive pronoun is ka, masculine, because it's who we're talking about, right? It doesn't matter that the mother here is feminine. We're talking about whose mother is it. In this case, it's Muhammad's mother, and Muhammad is masculine, and so ummuka. Masculine. Also, we see here the jar and majroor. We see how we use prepositional phrases, which is a nice little review. Fi, fil Kuwaiti, right? So we learned fi, we learned ma'a, we learned li, we learned several others, min, right? And we learned that the noun that comes after any preposition has to be majroor, in the genitive case, and in this scenario and many scenarios, it is demonstrated by a kasra. So that's why it's fil Kuwaiti and not fil Kuwaitu. Very good. Okay, and then aydan. Recall that aydan means also. Ma'a abi, هي مدرسة هناك. Very good. Okay, keep going.
أذهبت إلى الكويت يا محمد؟
نعم ذهبت.
وزميلك أين أبوه؟
أبوه في اليابان هو تاجر كبير.
ألك أخ
كبير.
Good.
sorry
تاجر كبير.
She added her tanween. Good job, Asma.
ألك أخ يا محمد؟
Okay, pause 1 second because this is a
sorry.
lengthy response. And I just, no, that's fine. Just pause here for a second before Muhammad answers. Just to point out, we're going to be soon getting into verbs. Okay, and this is your very, very, very first taste of verbs. When we change the end of a noun to reflect grammar, that is called declension. Okay, that's called i'rab in Arabic. That's what we've been doing so far. Does it have a dhamma because it's marfu'? Does it have a kasra because it's in the genitive case, majroor, etc., etc.? When we change the ending of a verb, we are changing it, and that's a different process of change. It's called conjugation. And conjugation is changing a verb to reflect who is doing that verb. So we take a base, in Arabic, our base root word for verbs is a past tense verb for he. Okay, so dhahaba, he went. Dhahaba, he went. That's our basis. That's our foundation. That's our default. And once we learn the patterns of conjugation and the rules of conjugation, we're going to basically manipulate this form right here to change it to reflect other people doing that same action. So if dhahaba is he went, if we add to it a ta with a fatha, and this loses its fatha and becomes sukun, dhahabta, that means you, singular, went, past tense. If we did the same thing but with ta and a dhamma, then it would be dhahabtu, and that means I went. It's conjugated for the first person singular. So we're going to be learning all of those conjugation patterns very, very soon. And that is extremely important because everything up until now has been, for the most part, jumla ismiya, with a little sprinkling of jumla fi'liya in here now and again. But Arabic, much more than English, relies upon jumla fi'liya, sentences that begin with verbs. And in fact, the default sentence in Arabic is the jumla fi'liya, sentences that begin with verbs and not jumla ismiya. So that's on your radar, and we're going to be getting into that very, very soon. Just wanted to point that out. Okay, so now Muhammad can give his long response to the question.
I think Muhammad responded, right? Oh, sorry.
نعم لي أخ واحد اسمه أسامة وهو معي
Yep.
هنا في هنا في
Yep.
مدينة maybe مدينة.
Yep. في المدينة T because the في.
مدينة منورة.
Yes.
Okay. ولي أخت واحد اسمه زينب وهي في العراق مع زوجها.
Good.
زوجها مهندس. زوجها مهندس.
Very good. Okay, pause. I'm going to point out some things. So this is a very, very important part of the dialogue. So the first thing we have is that preposition can have added onto them possessive pronouns. Okay, if we have ma'a, which means with, then we can add a possessive pronoun to say with you, with him, with me, with us, right? So here, ma'i is with me, ma'aka with you, ma'ahu with him, ma'ahum with them, and so on and so forth. And every single preposition is the same. Fika, in you. Fi, in me. Fihim, in them, right? Or minka, from you. Minni, from me, and so on and so forth. So prepositions can have possessive pronouns added to them. Notice one thing, and this is a correction, but it's an important one, where we have Muhammad is talking about he has one brother and one sister. And notice the gender agreement in everything that he has to say. So he says, Akhun wahidun ismuhu. Okay, so masculine, masculine, masculine. And then he has wali ukhtun, ukht is a sister, wahidatun, extra ta marbuta here, that indicates that it's feminine. Wahida, or the number one, has to agree in gender with ukht. Ismuha, because the possessive pronoun, it's her name, right? And so it has to agree with the gender as well. Zainabu. Then the last thing I want to point out is how Zoj changes its grammatical position due to what comes before it. So we have Wahiya fil Iraqi ma'a with Zawjiha, right? There's a kasra on Zoj because it comes after ma'a, and ma'a is a preposition. And then the very next sentence, nay, the very next word, it has a dhamma. Zawjuha muhandisun, because this is your classic jumla ismiya. This is mubtada, this is khabar. Very, very, very simple sentence. And so because it is mubtada, it will have to have a dhamma, or it will be marfu' in this case with a dhamma. Why am I putting this out? Because when we add possessive pronouns to words, which is everything that we're doing in this lesson, it's added after the normal ending of the word, which demonstrates the grammatical case, right? Do we see that? How zawjiha, zawjuha, the ha is the same. The ha is not going to change because of grammar. Rather, what is normally the ending of the word, zawj, is going to change due to the grammar, and then whatever else comes after it that's attached is fixed, is mabni. Zawjuha ma'a zawjiha. Very good. Anyone have any questions up until this point? Okay, and then Hamid and Muhammad. Yes,
Translate,
please. You want to translate?
No, can you translate it?
Oh, can I translate? Okay, so the question is, alaka, do you have? Okay, and we'll learn this very, very soon. They're going to point it out for us. To use lam and to use inda are two ways to ask about possession or talk about possession. One is used for things that are essentially yours, and the other is used for things that are on your person. Also, one is used for people, aqil, things that have whatever we want to call it. I don't like the dichotomy of adamant, inanimate, but something like that. And then inda is usually used for things that are typically considered as objects. So laka would mean you have. Adding the hamza before it, alaka, do you have? Akhun, ya Muhammadu, do you have? This is nakira, this is indefinite, and so the meaning or the translation is, do you have a brother? In colloquial English, we would say, do you have any brothers? If we wanted to literally say that, we would translate it, we would put it in Arabic somewhat differently, but that's the meaning. And Muhammad says, yes, li, I have, akhun wahidun, I have one brother. Ismuhu Usamatu, his name is Usama. Wa huwa ma'i huna, huna is here. I think feel like we learned that, but maybe we didn't. It's been a while. So he is with me here, fil madinati al-munawwarati. So we learn now that Muhammad is a student in Medina, right? Um, like everybody else who studies this book over there in the university. So he's talking about he is in Medina, and so is his brother. Huwa ma'i huna fil madinati al-munawwarati. Wali ukhtun wahidatun, and I have one sister. Ismuha Zainabu. Her name is Zainab. وهي في العراق مع زوجها, and she is in Iraq with her husband. زوجها مهندس, and no, and her husband is an engineer. So in case you were worried about Zainab, whose hands she was in, if she's being taken care of for, he adds here, mashallah tabarakallah, that her husband is an engineer, and we know in the Muslim community we love our engineers, and so mashallah, we have no fears. She's doing good.
Is that husband or is it spouse? Is
Very
it
good. The precise meaning of zawj is spouse. Contextually here, it's husband. That's good though, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, he doesn't use zawja ever. He uses just simply zawj, and he assumes that you're smart enough, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to figure out whether he's talking about a husband or a wife. Zawj literally means pair, literally, right? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also uses the word zawj, azwaj, to talk about how he created things in pairs. من كل شيء خلقنا زوجين لعلكم تذكرون, right? That's in what? Surah At-Tur, I believe, or Dhariyat, one of the two. And so, zawj literally means pair. When it's applied to humans, it literally means spouse. And contextually here, because we're talking about the woman's spouse, we can translate it as implicitly meaning husband. But that's a good question. Any other questions about anything? Okay, let's finish this off. Go ahead.
أعندك سيارة يا أخي؟
لا ما عندي سيارة عندي دراجة
Good.
حمزة عنده سيارة.
Very good. Excellent work. Okay. And so now what they're doing is they're showing us a different way to talk about possession or ownership. So when we were talking about people, we were asking Muhammad about his brothers and sisters, his siblings. We used li, right? We use the possessive. They call it lam al-mulkiyah, because we're talking about people. We're also talking about something that's essentially his, whether even if they were to pass away, they're still the sibling, right? That's something that's an unshakable bond that can't really be revoked or destroyed. As for objects, no, right? Objects, they can be on your person or not on your person, or they can also be yours today and broken or gone tomorrow, someone else's. And so here we use a different word to talk about whether he has a car. Hamid wants a ride, basically. After all that talk, we see he was all coming around because, mashallah, in Saudi Arabia is a very polite culture, all these niceties. All of it maybe was driving to the fact that Hamid wanted to ride. And so he asks Muhammad, عندك سيارة يا أخي? Affectionately calls him my brother. Come on, my brother. Hook me up, brother. So inda is another way to talk about with. It usually means something that is on someone's person, right? And it also is used for objects as opposed to, usually as opposed to people. And these are general guidelines and not like absolute 100%, haram halal sort of rules. The response is, and we conjugate it, right? It's a preposition. So, not conjugate. We add a possessive pronoun to the end, as we do with all prepositions. The response is la, no. ما عندي سيارة. I do not have. ما عندي, and we'll talk about this in a second. سيارة, a car. عندي دراجة. I have a bicycle. in Saudi Arabia, this would be no problem. That means Hamid's going to ride on the handlebars. But he, points him to somebody else. He says, Hamzatu indahu sayaratun. So Hamza is the one who has a car with him if you're looking for a ride. We see that inda is added a possessive pronoun on the end to indicate mine. And we also see for the first time negation. And all up until this lesson, we have not dealt very much with negation. Okay, so we're going to negate. Oh, okay. Bird's eye view. Bird's eye view, if you are saying anything in any language, it's usually going to fit into one of three boxes. There's a statement, which is an affirmative statement. There is a negation, and then there is a question. Right? That holds true for all the languages I'm aware of, which is only a few. So if we're going to look for an example in English, let's say, this is a ball. Negate that sentence. This is not, I'll capitalize it for emphasis, not a ball. And then the question mark, is this a ball? And previously we had discussed, and this is something that vexes English language learners because this is not very intuitive. Look at how we change the order of the sentence in order to achieve these different things. This is a ball. What do we have to do in English to negate it? We have to add a negative particle not between the subject and the predicate, or after the verb to be more precise. How do we form the question? Even worse. We have to take these two words and we have to switch the order. We have to flip them. This is a ball. Is this a ball? And that's why English is an analytical language, because it's the order of the words that gives meaning as opposed to things actually on the word. So just by switching the order of those two words, now we've made a question. Is this a ball? Okay, Arabic doesn't work like that. We have, let's use their example. Indaka sayara. You have with you a car. Indaka sayaratun. And pardon my funky writing. Okay, so this is a affirmative statement. You have a car with you right now. Indaka sayaratun. If I want to make a question, excuse me, let's go first in the order I already set out. If we want to negate that sentence, all we have to do is add something to the beginning. Ma. That's how we negate a jumla ismiyah, with ma. There are many, many different types of ma. This is only one of them. But if we want to negate a jumla ismiyah, we do it with ma. Ma indi sayaratun, or ma indaka sayaratun in this case. You don't have a car with you, or you don't have a car. Okay? And then finally, if we want to ask a question, do you? We simply add something different. Other than ma, we add the hamzatul istifham to ask a question. Indaka sayara, and we can also add hal, which we haven't done a lot with yet, but these are two acceptable ways to form a question. Indaka sayara. And so we've kind of just doubled everything that we have learned by learning how to now negate it. Everything up until now, we've almost been exclusively dealing with affirmative statements, a couple questions here and there, but now we know how to negate everything. Very good. Any questions about this before we continue on?
I just thought that saying Hamza, he has a car, that sounds so awkward. We wouldn't say that in English. Is there no other way of saying that in Arabic? Like, couldn't we just say Hamza has a car?
Oh, yes. So you're saying that the addition of the Hamza here is awkward?
Or that the Hamza and the who is redundant, like one of them are redundant.
Yes. Here it's called what's it called? Idrab. In Arabic, it's called idrab. So it has to do with something that's contrary to expectation, right? So if someone asks you, it's like, hey, do you have $5? It's like, no, I don't. He has it, right? It's an added emphasis that's responding to an expectation that you had it. That expectation was wrong, but you have another solution. right? So you're right. In a vacuum, this would be super awkward. You wouldn't say hamzatun indahu sayaratun. You would say inda hamzatun sayara, right? Or something like that that gets to the point. But it's because Hamid first asks Muhammad with the expectation that he has a car. And then Muhammad says, look, buddy, no, sorry, I don't have a car, but Hamza, he has a car, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think just that in English we would probably manage that by tone. We wouldn't use the extra word.
Yes.
So I guess that doesn't happen in Arabic, maybe.
Yes, you're right. No, you're right. That would be a little strange if we said Hamza, he has a car. Yeah, we don't generally. It's much more of a no-no in English to mention both the proper name and something that implies that name, such as a pronoun. I think that's what we're discovering here. Like we wouldn't say Hamza, he has a car. No, you're right. That's redundant. But in Arabic, this is not considered redundant. It's more of a emphasis thing. Good stuff. Okay, let's get to our gentlemen, who have been languishing by themselves. Ajib عن الأسئلة الآتية. Answer the following questions. Are they okay? This is a reading comprehension exercise mostly. I think we're going to skip this because we did it before and it's not super. I'd rather get to the other stuff in the lesson. Okay. ضع في الفراغ فيما يلي الضمير who or ha. Who or ha. So here we have now questions. We're going to have to add the possessive pronoun his or her. Okay. And you're going to have to distinguish what we're talking about. And remember what I said earlier about his or her. It might be counterintuitive. His mother, you hear mother, you're thinking feminine, but no, it's actually his mother. So the gender is going to be determined by the thing that's possessing the object and not by the object itself. Let's start with Muhammad. Can you do number 1 for us?
Sure. هذه البنت طالبة.
Good.
اسمها زينب.
Excellent. Very good. Ismuha, because it's talking about her. Next is Dr. Zia there. Number 2.
محمد طبيب وابن هو مهندس.
Very good. Excellent. Number 3, Asma.
هذا الرجل تاجر كبير
Good.
اسمه عبد الله.
Very
عبد
good.
الله.
Excellent. Good job. Sister Musarrat.
آمنة في الغرفة وأمها في المطبخ.
Right. في المطبخ. Yep. With a sukoon on thought. Very good. I don't think we've had that word before. Matbakh is kitchen.
Kitchen, we've done it before. I made an error.
Okay. So and here's a little quick morphology lesson. So if we're breaking it down to its roots, the root is ta, ba, kha, and this means to cook. Okay. So tabakha as a verb, past tense verb, means to cook. Okay. Tabakha. So tabakhtu, I cooked. Tabakhta, you cooked. If I want to make it into what's called ism makan, the noun of place, meaning the place where this sort of activity goes on. Okay, I just add a meme to the beginning, mat, and this becomes with a sukoon, and this is now has turned into an ism, a noun, and so we add a tanween or something on the end. Mat.
So it's like masjid or maktab.
Yes, exactly.
Markaz.
Exactly. There's many of them. Once you learn the pattern, you start to see them everywhere. Okay, so matbakh is the kitchen, literally the place where cooking happens. Masjid is from sujud, right? The place where prostration happens, and so on and so forth.
Madrasa.
Madrasa, the place where dars happens, lessons. Or... Exactly. Number 5, back to Muhammad.
Aishatun tabibatun wa ukhtuhu.
Which one?
Aisha ukhtuha.
Okay, finish the sentence.
Mumaridatun.
Good, and we remember that mumarridatun is nurse, is a nurse. How did you know it was ukhtuha and not ukhtuhu?
Aisha, her.
Yes, Aisha's sister. Good.
Yes,
Incorrect. Okay, and Dr. Zia, finish us off, number 6 here.
خرج محمد من الفصل وخرج معه زميله.
Very good. Wow, this was tricky. I'm glad you did that well. How did you know that there was a dhamma on the lam in zamiluhu? Why wasn't it zamilahu or zamilihu or zamilihi?
Going with Muhammad.
Okay, good. And Muhammad is what in the sentence? Is he the one who does the action? Is he the receiver of the action? Is he part of the proposition?
That's the action.
Yes, exactly. So here we have different room entirely. Remember we talked about Arabic was like a room, or like a house. One room is jumla ismiya, the other room is jumla fi'liya. And each room has different furniture, right? The furniture in the room that's jumlatul ismiya is mubtada khabar. And the furniture that's in jumla fi'liya is fi'l, fa'il, maf'ul. So here we have our fi'l. This is our verb. Now we're looking for the doer of the verb, and it is Muhammad, okay? But this is, we have a conjunction here. وَخَرَجَ مَعَهُ. So we have Muhammad does the verb, leaving. Muhammad leaves. And then we have, okay, again, someone else is leaving. Who's the other person that's leaving with him? Zamiluhu, right? So his colleague, his classmate, is also the doer of the verb, which is why it has a dhamma, zamiluhu. And once it has the dhamma, that means that the ha also has the dhamma. Wait a second, Imam, didn't you say that the ha was fixed for who? Yes, mostly. There's one scenario in which this changes, and that's only for phonetic reasons and not for grammatical reasons. You guys have probably learned or figured out by now that in the Quran and other places, if you have a kasra or a ya before the ha, then we don't say fihu, right? We say fihi. And this comes back to the same principle that we talked about earlier in Arabic phonetics, where the dhamma and the fatha and the kasra are considered on a spectrum, on a continuum, and Arabic phonology does not permit, in almost all cases, jumping from one end of the spectrum to the other. And so instead of making it fihu, they made it fihi, just for ease of pronunciation. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with grammar. It has nothing to do with prepositions. It has nothing to do with any of that. If the kasra or a ya comes into the hu, then you just change it to he, just to make it sound nice. But here we have zamiluhu, and so it stays on what it normally is. Very good. Anyone have any questions about anything? We'll stop here for the day. Okay, good stuff, everybody. Excellent work. Inshallah, we will see you soon. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi